Hi everyone, this is Sagar. In today's video, we are going to look at how to configure Kubernetes with authentication and RBAC. This will cover the basics of use of configuring Kubernetes using the Kube ADM tool. And as an identity provider, we are going to use Keycloak. Now, in order to make our development easy, I have already created some scripts which is available in my GitHub. Go to github.com/sagarpatkatl and you can see this repository Cube ADM Learning. Uh, let's start by cloning this. Once you have cloned this repository, just go inside the repository and check what is there inside. Basically consists of, this is basically a Vagrant uh, definition. Vagrant is a tool for provisioning virtual machines, and currently this is configured to create three virtual machines. One is node 1, node 2 and node 3, as you can see here. And it is also going to install the necessary tools inside the virtual machines. So these tools are basically, this is using an Ansible script to do that. And the three important tools here are KubeADM, Kubelet and kubectl. This will allow us to quickly create the virtual machines in which we can then configure Kubernetes. But before we get into that, let's first look at how to configure Keycloak itself. Now, Keycloak is an identity provider. Let's just go to their homepage. So it's an open source identity and access management application. Now, if you have your own Keycloak deployment, then what you can do is you can allow other people to authenticate with the credentials of users who are part of your Keycloak deployment. What we are going to do is we are going to deploy Keycloak within Docker. So let's go to hub.docker.com, and the official image here is jboss/keycloak. This is the image. So if we want to run this in Docker, first let me make sure that Docker is running. No, let me start it. So the first thing that we are going to do is run Keycloak. Now it's a simple command, docker run, wanted to run it as a daemon and remove the container if it is stopped, and give the container a name called Keycloak, and we have to expose the port. So let's expose its port 8080 and start, give the image name. Okay, and you can see this has started. Let's look at the logs and wait for the message saying that Keycloak has started. Usually comes in as a last line. So here it is. It has started in 21 seconds. And in order to access this, we can access it using localhost 8080. But you see, it says that you need local access to create the initial admin user. So the initial user also is not created in Keycloak. So we will have to do that. And the way to do that is to provide the username and password as environment variables, as you can see here, right? So let's just do that. Let me stop the container, and this is a run command that we used previously. Uh, Let me put the environment variables here. And then run it. Okay, I have to give -e one more time for the second one. Okay, some problem. Yeah. Okay, and now you can see this is started in 21 seconds. So let's again log into it at localhost 8080, admin console, admin and password, what we provided as environment variables. And this is the Keycloak configuration. So although we can continue working from here, there's going to be one tiny problem. Since Keycloak is an identity provider, it has to be served over HTTPS, right? Which means that we have to generate self-signed certificates for this, and only then Kubernetes will be able to use this as an identity provider. Without that, Kubernetes cannot use it. So the next thing we are going to do is configure this with our own self-signed certificates. Now, before we do that, let me explain to you how the configuration is going to be for this deployment. Let me quickly log into Google Drive. So basically, this box represents my laptop, okay, or the network for my laptop. What this is called is, this is the host OS that is running, right? And when we run Kubernetes, it runs inside this as a guest OS. Okay, so let me make this a different color, right? So this is the guest OS and this is the host OS. This runs inside, the guest OS runs inside VirtualBox, and this is my laptop. So when I'm running Keycloak itself runs directly in my laptop. So let me just say this is Keycloak. So give a different color here. So this is Keycloak. This is my guest OS and this is my host OS. Okay. So when Keycloak is exposed over a port, it is a host network over which it is exposed. And when my virtual machine is trying to connect to Keycloak, then remember that this guest network, this guest OS has its own IP address and the host OS has a different IP address. Now, in order for this guest to connect with the host, what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect with a host only networking. So if you look at my Vagrant file, then the host networking is configured for each one of these using this configuration. So each one of them, the network for each of the VMs, the network is being set as a private network and an IP address is being specified. Now this is a /24 IP address, and the IP address of the host is always going to be 192.168.101. Okay, so this has already been configured. So what this means is, if any of these virtual machines wants to connect to a service running on the host machine, then it can access it using the IP address 192.168.101. Okay, so now Yeah, the other thing is when we are generating a SSL certificate, we have to give the IP address name or the domain name for which that certificate has been generated. And in order to do that, since I don't have my own domain name, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a different nip.io. So nip.io is a open DNS server. What this will allow us to do is this will provide us with any custom domains. So for instance, if we want to connect to the IP address 192.168.100.1, then we can do a lookup for a domain name with this exact same IP address and then say .nip.io, right? And when you look at the response, then this gives you this IP address in response. So we can be a little more creative here. We will have a little more choice of how to name the domain name. So we can call this Keycloak -192.168.100.1. Okay, so I've replaced the dots with dashes and I'm giving this service a name called Keycloak service, right? And when I run this, you can see that it still gives back the IP address as 192.168.100.1. Instead of 1, if I give 2 here, then it responds with 2. Okay, so this is a very helpful nip.io, and whenever we are working on DevOps projects and mostly with DNS, then this is a lifesaver. So let's create certs for this domain name, not this one, this domain name. Let me create a directory called certs and create the self-signed certificates here. So open SSL request x509 nodes and valid for 365 days. Out key is tls.key, or rather key out, I think. Key out is tls.key and out is tls.crt. And provide all the certificate information. Country name India, state or province name Karnataka, locality name Bangalore, organization name, I'll just give my name here, organizational unit name IT. This is where we give the domain name. Okay, I'm not going to give any email address. And now if you see in the current directory, there are 2 files created, tls.crt and tls.key. Now we have to configure Keycloak to use this self-signed certificates. And to do that, if we go back to our Docker's documentation of this image, so this is the setting which tells us how to configure it. Now what we have to do is we have to mount a volume at this location inside the container, and it should have 2 files, tls.crt and tls.key. That's what is required. So let's go and modify our container again. So this is the running container. Let's stop this. And this is the run statement. Now what I'm going to do is include the volume, which is certs, and volume we have to give it as an absolute path. So $pwd, and then the location is /etc/x509/https. And there is also one more change required. Okay, let me just stop it again. I think it stopped, so let me run it again. So that was a command which I used previously. This is the which I used long time back. This is a command which I just used to run the container. Let's give the volume information here. So $pwd/certs:/etc x509 and run it. And this is the container that started. Now one of the important things to notice here is this line, HTTP key store successfully created. This means that it has found the TLS configuration, and it is now using that. Okay, so Let's just wait for this to start, approximately 21 seconds, maybe a little more because it was generating the key store. Yeah, so here it is. And now we can simply open HTTPS and Keycloak -192.168.100.11.nip.io, and I'm using HTTPS. Okay, I think there is one more mistake that I did. When we use HTTPS, let me first stop the container. When we use HTTPS, the port numbers that we are exposing will be a little different. So I'm going to expose port 443 in the host network, and in the guest network it's going to be 8443. Let's just wait for this to get created quickly. Yeah, let's try it again. Okay, I'm trying this 11. 11 is not the right one. 1 is the proper address here. Oh, there is another problem. The other problem is that this IP address, the host only network, is only created when I start the virtual machine. So let me say vagrant up node 1, and this is when the VirtualBox host only networking driver is created, which will give us access to this IP address. Otherwise, the virtual Ethernet adapter for VirtualBox doesn't exist and we can't access it. So let this start off. Okay, there we go. The error, we'll look at it later, but hopefully now we should be able to access this. Not yet. Okay, so basically this is a certificate error. We have to click on proceed to Keycloak, and you can see that there's not a trusted certificate. It's self-signed, so that is why the error is coming, right? So if you go to admin console, log in with admin password, you can see that this is now connected over HTTPS and not HTTP. And now we are ready to configure, this Keycloak instance in our Kubernetes cluster.